Okay, we are live.
Thank you, Justin, and welcome to everyone to the July 18th Town Hall meeting, Big Canoe. I'm Bob Crouch, first and foremost a property owner in Big Canoe. Happen to have been elected to represent all of the property owners. We have had a 2020 fascinating year with COVID. We've had a 4-month reprieve from the COVID-19 in Big Canoe due to the mitigation policies being adhered to by we, the property owners. But it's now
Debbie
here and among us.
joined the meeting.
Please continue to stay informed and to follow mitigation as science recommends. I have 5 dedicated property owners joining me on the board, and I'd like them please to introduce themselves.
Lou Stephenson, Vice President.
Candace Robertson, Treasurer.
Wayne Crawford, Secretary.
Phil Baldwin, Director Representative for the developer and Big Canoe Realty.
Regis Falensky, first-year board member, 9-year resident of Big Canoe.
Thank you, everyone. Our relatively new general manager, got about 6 weeks on the job. Scott Auer, would you introduce yourself and any senior staff who is on the call now?
Good morning, everybody. This is Scott Auer, and I wish we were all together, but this will work just fine for today. We also have Jason Brunel, Robert Sabat, Debbie Pickett, and Jane Hagan. Your senior staff members are also on the call. Look forward to the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Scott. We've got an extensive agenda as depicted. Justin, if you move that to the agenda. You can see we've got candidates for the POA board. We'll be talking about another wonderful volunteer in the President's Award. The bulk of the meeting is going to be spent on the results of the property owner survey, which includes items E and F, the strategic plans and the master plan. After we finish that, we'll go to a couple of brief introductions of items that we are working on that are very important, like Creek 9 and the capital contribution fee, and then we'll open it up for questions. Okay, next slide, please. My heartfelt thanks to the dedicated property owners on the election committee who diligently seek qualified candidates for the board. They approach a broad spectrum of potential candidates from all aspects of Big Canoe to determine their willingness to run. These efforts have resulted in 2 candidates agreeing to faithfully represent the property owners. And they are Bob Littell and Amy Tropfenbaum. And you'll be hearing more from them about their qualifications. Next slide, please, Justin. Annually, speaking of volunteers, and excellent volunteers, there is an annual presentation of the President's Award to recognize a property owner who epitomizes volunteerism and contributes substantially to improving Big Canoe. There are multiple nominations of outstanding individuals again this year, but the 2020 selection is Joe Tipton. This is one way to introduce this. Normally, he's going to be recognized by hundreds of property owners in the chapel in a town hall meeting. I would ask you that when you get an opportunity, please congratulate Joe on his outstanding contributions, and we'll go right now to what they are. Okay, Justin, if you could play the video.
This year was extraordinary that more than 50 individuals nominated you, Joe, and they recognized your extraordinary work in designing and building the high gap park and trail system. You contributed more than 2 miles of trails, benches, tables, chairs, birdhouses, bridges, and did this in 2,000 hours over a 4-year period. one man year of labor. It was a labor of love, not done for recognition. And that labor of love was recognized by the love of the property owners for the results of your labor. The trail system was recognized as the highest rated amenity in Big Canoe in the property owner survey, thanks to your work. We truly appreciate everything that you have done and congratulate you for your extraordinary effort. And in token of our appreciation, I represent all the property owners of Big Canoe in giving you this momentum.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be recognized for this. With so many people in Big Canoe who volunteer so many hours and so much of their time, to be recognized with this is really special. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
As I say, there were many qualified candidates submitted again this year, and Joe represents the best of the best. So my congratulations again. His contributions are particularly highly valued this year in this COVID environment where people want to get out in the fresh air and exercise. So very good. The survey, the 2020 Property Owner Survey continues the practice of soliciting input from property owners concerning their experience in Big Canoe. This year's survey was conducted in a unique, dynamic environment. We're transitioning to include Bobby Jones' links in the management of Big Canoe. The board was elected in 2020, not 2019, as is normal. It included almost one half of the board turnover, and as things turned out, it is half of the board is brand new this year in March. We began working in March, not in December, and there was a new GM added to the mix in June. The ongoing environment includes the pandemic that was declared in March. So it has been a turbulent year. The survey was meant to capture the mood of the community as this new POA formed so that progress can be measured at year end. The results were that property owners mostly loved living in Big Canoe, yet expressed significant opportunities for improvement. There were many clear messages. It was not surprising that food and beverage performance was unsatisfactory and that there were substantial issues with board performance. However, there are some apparently contradictory messages, such as spending was out of control or that assessment should be increased to properly maintain our facilities. Today, we're going to concentrate on the messages that were received, not on the many plans to improve. Rather, we will continue with those improvements that we started and formulate plans and let our actions speak louder than our words. The survey results will be posted on the POA website. And you can see over 1,800 people responded, and there are 8,000 very telling comments, some more telling than others. Okay, if we go to the next, we placed the results in 3 categories. The survey was rated on a scale of 1 to 10. And here's the top rated. Okay, you can see that the amenities were very adequately represented there as being some of the top. Now we've got some others that were in the middle category, aspiring to be positive, and those are
Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118,
before we move on to the results that require long-term plans and the lowest ratings, I'd like to share some typical comments on why property owners love Big Canoe. Justin, the next slide, please. Thank you. You'll see here the theme that is prevalent in those first three and even in the fourth comment: environment, amenities, and people. They are the prime reason why people love living in Big Canoe. The amenities are the list of amenities, and I think sometimes lost in translation is the fact that we own our own amenities, and that's not true with every gated community, but that's a very big positive in this environment of Big Canoe. The last one says, we love the natural beauty of Big Canoe. We love the privacy of a gated community. We are concerned about the financials, particularly management of the clubhouse and food and beverage. So while they love living here, they have some concerns, and they are part of the category that are not so highly rated. So Justin, if you'd play that video, please. And the next slide shows some typical comments regarding deficient areas. There are numerous critical comments on social media producing negativity, being a very alarming and disturbing. There was considerable emotion last year, and I'm sure, as everyone is aware, social media was very graphic. 2020 has shown a marked increase in tolerance. There are notably fewer negative comments, and when posted, property owners now dispute non-factual comments. A positive example occurred just this week when two property owners had an incident. There was a Facebook posting about it, an apology issued from one party, an acceptance of the other party, and then numerous posts acknowledging both property owners and citing the neighborly behavior, tolerance, consideration, and respect as should be expected from our small town community. A maturity has been demonstrated by property owners refraining from posting rumors on the COVID-19 environment. Many of these issues have a great deal of history, and we can go on to the next. They took a long time to fester and need to be addressed directly and diligently. It's important to remember that we property owners, I'll look at the mistrust of the board, and the board was rated very, very low. The overall board, honesty, trust, effective communications, and that needs to be addressed. And that's one of the long-term issues that property owners have had. It's important to recognize here in this environment, though, again, on a positive note, is that we are self-governing. 15 years ago, the developer turned over governance of Big Canoe to the property owners of Big Canoe. So we have our own destiny in our hands. There are fewer notable negative comments, and when posted, property owners now dispute non-factual comments. The history is a long time to fester and needs to be addressed directly and diligently. Next slide, we have begun the process and will continue to focus on improvement. An example is a long-held belief that the board micromanages and is based on historic fact. The board has micromanaged in the past. But I can tell you that this board from day one respects the role of the general manager, whether it was the interim general manager of Bobby Jones Links in March, April, and May, or Scott from June on. An example of this is the board in March set a policy of safety first in the pandemic environment, and the general manager implemented that policy operationally. It's heartening to see that many comments acknowledge significant improvement in the transparency, but understand that more is required and that patience is worn thin. I'll show some examples of the actions taken to improve openness on the next slide. We have communicated that additional work sessions occurred. It has been a practice for many years for boards to hold work sessions beyond the published board meeting and work session monthly, many others, but that was never publicized. So we publicized that. We talked about the agenda items so property owners are aware of what's being discussed by the board. We've invited the finance committee chair and the two candidates, now that they have been nominated, the two candidates for the board, to our work sessions. We solicited property owner input on the draft Bobby Jones Links agreement and made that agreement accessible. This survey will be accessible. There's an asterisk that shows how you get to this. And we summarize questions and answers at each board meeting and work sessions. There was a question about the roles of the Bobby Jones Links, the general manager and the board. That's available as shown in this asterisk. And the last item on here is kind of a different one. And I had a conversation with the president of Windstream, Georgia operations, informing him of the survey and comments on the infrastructure and the need to keep the infrastructure vibrant. So I inquired to him as their plans for improvement and got the good news that starting in January of 2021, Windstream is going to provide 1 gigabyte service to the property owners of Big Canoe. That ends the presentation of what the board was. There's some overlap, of course, because communications is both board and staff. And I covered some of that, but Scott now is going to go into some more detail about the messages that management has received. Scott, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bob. When I asked Tim Moran to put together the survey results in a way that would communicate well how we were doing, I wasn't quite sure what he was going to do. And he did a masterful job, I think, of laying out what the survey actually says. And we got some work to do. There is no doubt we got some work to do. But if you look at those first 2 videos, there's a lot to be proud of here. And last night I was running through the presentation with my wife. She saw those first 2 videos and she's like, boy, we picked the right place to live. I mean, there's a lot to be proud of, and a lot of people have spent a lot of time making those whole 2 first sets of videos be true and come to life. So we do have some work to do, but we also do a lot of things right. So first thing, clear, very clear in the survey. I've lived here for 2 years. It's pretty clear to me too. We need to fix food and beverage once and for all. This was the single #1 issue that came up in the survey. And everything from the consistency of food quality, we got to reduce our ticket times, better reservation system, be nice to have some different healthier menu options available. There's some tiredness in some of our properties and some of the things that we do when we sit down and dine together that we got to take a look at. And of course, financially, we could not be in the same situation that we were in last year. So that is loud and clear to all of us. And I would say it is our #1 priority as a community. Okay, Jason, Justin, next slide. The other thing is easier to read financials. Sometimes I think, there's a difference between communicating data and communicating information. We communicate a ton of data on financials. But you really need to be an extremely well-versed CFO sometimes to understand what all of that is saying. So you have my commitment to make the financials a little easier to read and understand. Rules and enforcement of rules has been coming up a lot lately, whether it's speed limits or just, dog walking, things like that. We need to focus more on enforcement of the rules that we have. We have plenty of rules. Sometimes we don't do a consistent job of enforcing them. Cleanliness of the amenities scored pretty high on the survey, but there are some areas, particularly restrooms, that we need to pay a bit more attention to. Communications website, definitely room for improvement on the website, and that's on our list with Bobby Jones for this year. Fixing the bocce courts and the amenities plan. Amenities plan value scored kind of low. We are working on that. There was a great meeting yesterday with Bobby Jones and all of our amenities managers to look at how we might want to reshape that plan. Next slide, please. The good news is this is not a once a lifetime survey. When I moved into this office, there was a couple old surveys that I found moldering in desk drawers. Nothing's going to molder in this desk drawer. So we just did this survey to get a really good baseline of where the community is. We'll be doing this again at the end of the year in January, and then we will do it annually thereafter. If we're not doing that, then how can we possibly know what we have to work on? So you have the board's commitment, my commitment, Bobby Jones's commitment. We are going to make this a really good habit. Next slide, please. On the topic of communications, and the survey said communication needs improvement, rating of 6.6. That's absolutely true. And on the next slide, I'll give you a little bit of an idea why that's true. So somehow over the course of the last probably 25 years of our 48, this is our communications infrastructure. This is how we've developed a way for property owners to communicate with the POA. And I don't know about you, but that's kind of a mess. That's really, really hard to keep track of. And one thing I've learned in 6 weeks, if you went to camp as a young kid, like I did, we used to play this fun game called telephone. And you'd go around the big circle with all the campers and you'd tell the story. And by the time it got to the end again, it was a whole different story. This is kind of our version of telephone right here. There's emails flying around like you would not believe. Things coming to the board, they come to me because the board is trying really, really hard not to get into operational things and doing a good job with it. Goes from me to someone else on my staff. That person may or may not know the answer. They send it to someone else. Eventually the answer gets to the property owner, which may have taken about a week by now as it's kind of pinged along. So you guys and me as a property owner, we don't think anybody's listening. Finally, the response happens. And then, but wait a minute, the person who got the email in the first place doesn't know the response happened. You kind of get the idea. So next slide, we're eliminating all that, and you have one place to go to ask a question. And it's called Ask the POA at bigcanoepoa.org. This is live right now. So anybody who wants to ask a question after the meetings are done that we'll respond to early next week. We try to do we're going to try to do a 24 to 36 hour turnaround time on your questions. This site is live. We're also going to add it to our homepage. Justin, you can show us that. So that's the homepage today. That's the homepage early next week. So we're going to start with the email address being live, kind of as a beta test like Microsoft would do, make sure our system is working, make sure all of our rules of where questions get assigned and things like that, how that works, make sure all the software is working fine. And if it is, which I think it will be because we've been testing it, then we'll add this to the homepage early next week. So when you click on that button that says Ask the POA, this is what you'll see. You'll get to actually create a ticket. And so you can put your name, your email, there'll be, I think, a place to put your lot number, and then you'll have drop-down menus. And you can say, this is a water question thing, this is landscaping, this is repairs and maintenance. This system will take the place of Fix It at POA.org. because that was just another email address that went into the big telephone game that we had. If it's a dining question, if it's a rules and regulations question, you'll be able to tell us, and that will make sure the system automatically gets the request to the right person in the organization without it bouncing around for 3 or 4 days before it finally lands. So it will allow us, the system behind the scenes will allow us to define who gets each of these emails, making or form requests, make sure that we're staying on top. We'll be able to see which questions have been answered, which questions are still pending. It'll automatically send a response to y'all, so that way you know that we received your request. It's going to do an awful lot, I think, to help us do a better job of communicating with property owners and getting you the right answer from the right person much faster. So like I said, the email address is live and we're in beta test. So go ahead and try to use it over the weekend. Next slide. Other things, social media. Lots of people have been doing lots of talking on social media for a long time. The 2 years I've been here, certainly that's true. And unfortunately, the POA wasn't doing a whole lot of talking on social media. So we have a site, but it was kind of basically the same thing that you already knew about our events and happenings and things like that. So that is getting relaunched beginning this week. We have a new relaunched official Facebook page, and we'll have an Instagram page that goes with that. Purpose of that site is that is the official voice of the POA. So lots of other things spinning around that you know people can share ideas on, but if you want to hear, you know, the voice of truth and justice, it'll be on the POA sponsored page. So goals of that page are to educate, to inform, to celebrate. We have a lot to celebrate here. Celebrate the Big Canoe lifestyle. Talk about wedding tips and things like that. That's still an important business for us. Showcase the Big Canoe lifestyle, and also talk about if you're thinking about doing meetings or small corporate events, things like that, there would be information there. You will also have a way to do Ask the POA from Facebook as well. So if you'd prefer to do that on email, you can do that. If you prefer to do it on Facebook, you can do it. If you prefer to do it on the website, you can do it. All goes into the same system, all gets routed to the same people. Next slide, please. There was a question about how does my life fit in with Bobby Jones and the board of directors. This is kind of the way we look at it. This is kind of how it works on a daily basis. You have the POA board of directors at the top of the chart. They're basically setting the strategy, goals, and objectives for the community. I have the privilege of representing all the property owners as your general manager, and my cohort Gautam over here is the VP of operations at Bobby Jones Links. We're talking constantly. I mean, we meet several times a week. If he's in town, we're talking every couple days, comparing what's happening at other communities. What can we learn from that? How are they implementing COVID things? You know, it's great information sharing for me to understand what's going on. And he brings a tremendous wealth of experience to help us do a better job. And then I have 2 sets of resources to lean on pretty heavily to get everything done. One is our very competent POA staff that we've talked about. And the other is a Bobby Jones Links support center. And they have finance, and they have HR, and they have amenities help, and they have marketing help, and all of those folks are people that help us and help our POA staff do their job better and more efficiently. So it's a really good team. And we'll go to the next slide. I'll give you an example of how that team actually plays out on a daily basis. So defined roles, the board of directors guides the business of Big Canoe. So an example of that would be the board of directors would look at that survey and say, we need to set a strategic objective that the food and beverage operation needs to provide excellent service and really good quality, and would also give me a financial target of where they think that should end up. Bobby Jones Links then is my partner, and they work on the business of Big Canoe. And they have actually come up with a list of 17 major changes based on the work that Tom and Robert have been doing. And these 17 major changes are things that, based on their experience, we need to do with our food and beverage operation. And then myself, the general manager, and the Big Canoe associates, we work in the business of Big Canoe on a daily basis. So you have of, on, and in, and we're the guys in the business, we're the boots on the ground. And basically myself and our staff implement that 17-point food and beverage plan. And that's our job, is to implement with excellence. So the three of us are like three legs on a stool, and the stool is sturdy because all three of us are holding that stool up. And if ever two of those legs start to try to be the same leg, then the stool gets really wobbly really fast. So I think all three of those groups have been doing a great job in the 6 weeks I've been here of saying, each of us have a leg, and we need to kind of stay in our space, and that stool will be incredibly stable. So that may help a little bit understand how the three of us work together. Next slide. And with that, I'd like to introduce our director, Regis Felinsky, who's going to talk about this strategic plan.
Yes, good morning to everybody, and thank you for participating in this meeting. As Scott had mentioned, I am going to talk about our strategic plan, specifically the ratings that were achieved on the survey relative to the plan. And please change that slide. I think people have seen enough of me already. So the strategic plan. Strategic planning is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. I actually, strategic planning was an important part of my job in the last 4 or 5 years of my business career. So it is a subject I feel somewhat passionate about. The rating on our survey relative to the strategic plan was 4.9, which I feel is fair, if not even a little bit generous. Some very telling comments. We dislike any reference to being a resort. What is our identity? Don't know what the plan is, and we've had 100 plans. So what are the issues here? What are those property owners and many more telling us with this low rating? Well, in my opinion, number one, we don't really have a strategic plan. We've got key elements of a plan, but we do not have a complete comprehensive strategic plan. We've got a vision statement, which is an essential and key component of a strategic plan. A vision statement is very simply how we see ourselves, not necessarily how we see ourselves now, but what we really aspire to be. So our vision statement that came out of the strategic plan in 2015 is to be the preeminent private mountain community in the Southeast, recognized for providing an extraordinary, friendly, and enriching lifestyle. As I said, that came out, that's been around for 5 years. We also have strategic objectives, which are very important and another key component or aspect of the strategic plan. Those strategic objectives are to strengthen and promote Big Canoe's image, maintain the character of Big Canoe, be an employer of choice, and be prudent stewards of POA assets. So let's refer back again to the comments. We dislike any reference to being a resort. What is our identity? And we've had 100 plans. Well, you look at the vision statement, I think that provides a pretty clear statement of what we think our identity is. There's no reference to resort. And like I said, we have had, this plan has been in effect since 2015. So we really haven't had 100 strategic plans. So what's the issue here? Well, I think I don't think the property owners are misinformed. I don't think they're uninformed. I think the problem is number 3. We don't know what the plan is. Next slide, please. So our plan is typically presented once a year in the town hall meeting, and it's rarely, if ever, referenced again. There's very little visibility into our strategic plan. When I went to look for information on the strategic plan on our website, since our website is currently not searchable, it takes a considerable amount of effort to find it. But there are elements or fragments of the strategic plan in 2 or 3 different places. Many of them are buried deep in you have to go to follow one link into another link to another link. So it's not, it takes a determined effort for anyone to really find out what our strategic plan is. And finally, there's no flow down of our strategic objectives. And I will talk about that later. So what are we going to do? Well, number one, we need to develop a complete, comprehensive strategic plan, and we need to have the community involved in this. During the campaign, I was contacted, or I had a number of questions at my board campaign is what I'm referring to. Number of questions about visions, about strategic plans. I know there's a lot of people in this community that have a very good understanding of what strategic planning is, and I want to tap those resources and do this job. And I'm not being critical of previous boards, but really to fill out and expand on the foundation that they have built for us. Realistically speaking, that's not going to happen until Q1 of next year. There is already enough on our plate that I can't realistically say that we're going to get to this within the next 5 months. The second thing we need to do, we need to start explaining our actions in the context of the strategic plan. When we engage with Bobby Jones to manage our organization, we need to explain how that fits with the objectives of the strategic plan. When we move forward with something like developing taking over the catering business at the Chimneys from Talk of the Town, we need to explain to the property owners and remind them what our strategic objectives are so that they can understand how this action is consistent with our strategic plan and will help us achieve that vision statement. And finally, and extremely important, we need to flow down our strategic objectives from the board to the GM, to the managers, to our employees, so that each and every year, all of our employees, all of us, have specific goals, individual goals that are tied to achieving the overall objectives, the strategic objectives, the top 4 objectives that I just talked about, that they have these goals that flow up to and support those objectives, and these are measurable, and employees, including the general manager and the board, are accountable for achieving these. And these objectives need to have some visibility. We can't keep this as a secret between, Scott and ourselves, or Jason and ourselves. The whole community should know what Scott's strategic or his personal objectives are, what Jason's strategic or personal objectives are, and how they fit into supporting the strategic plan. So hopefully you'll see a lot more of this in the coming months and year. And I really expect that we are going to do very well in improving that rating. Maybe not the next time the survey comes out, because this is a long process, but certainly in 2021, I expect to be in the 8 or above category. So thank you very much, and certainly I will be happy to answer any questions at the close of this the presentation. So next we're talking about plans. So Lou Stephenson, Vice President of the Board of Directors, will be talking about a master plan.
Good morning. If we can go to the next slide. This is a Big Canoe Master Plan update. Again, the next slide. Seeing this number on the survey, I have to admit, gave me a bit of pause, because this clearly reflects that the vital component of maintaining operations and sustaining the quality of life here in Big Canoe is not common knowledge. And that reflects on the POA board, which I will address later. The master plan for Big Canoe outlines areas for future development in the community using the plausible objectives that have been determined by the residents. It was in the early summer of 2018 that POA board members determined a master plan should be developed for the community. Recognizing many of our facilities and amenity conditions are aging and in need of renovation, Big Canoe should have a permanent professional schedule established to ensure that our community is maintained at safe and suitable conditions. As part of the ongoing process to determine community needs last summer, the POA board employed the services of 2 consultants to develop multi-year programs for prioritizing improvements. The board partnered with Chambers, as you know, to formally develop and design a master plan for Big Canoe. And Bergen Golf Designs was selected to design a long-term course improvement master plan. The findings from Chambers were then taken to the Long Range Planning Committee, where individual teams set out to research specific areas of the Chambers report and provide back an accounting of their findings. Their process in part was to be conscious of the useful life of Big Canoe's facilities and infrastructure with a focus on replacement, enhancement, maintenance, and safety, while preserving the character of Big Canoe. The master plan for Big Canoe is and will remain a living document. The project concepts are fluid, they're adaptable, and it's important to remember that all these proposed project considerations under the master plan are continually reviewed and updated by the Long Range Planning Committee. They are residents of Big Canoe. With the next slide, we'll get some updates regarding the 2019 report by Long Range Planning on our near-term projects for the community. The current status of these near-term projects has been validated by Jason Brownell. He provided the update. So the top 6 near-term project recommendations you see here were selected by the Long Range Planning Committee to be accomplished as finances and time permitted. Number 1, with the renovation of the clubhouse kitchen. That project is complete. And with completion of this project, we must also allow for acknowledgement and appreciation of the oversight provided by Mr. Wayne Crawford, steadfast and donating hundreds of hours of personal time in support of the completion of this project. Thank you, Wayne. Number 2, the Bergen renovation for the Creek Golf Course. Currently, the process for collecting bids for the renovation is underway to present the residents of Big Canoe with a firm cost for this work. This information will be presented to the property owners of Big Canoe for an upcoming vote. Number 3, the Chimneys facility renovation. The Long Range Planning Committee and Big Canoe staff have recently met with the architect HDA Architects Incorporated to begin the process of the redesign and the renovation of the Chimneys facility. Number 4, with the renovation of the postal facility, the parking lot renovation plan has been submitted to Pickens County. Their permit review can take 45 to 60 days, but after review, the project will be sent out for bid. Currently, there aren't any schedules or plans to renovate the actual postal facility at this time. Number 5, we had plans and projections to extend the Wellness Center parking lot to include an entrance and exit next to the rock slide area. But when Big Canoe staff eventually received this cost estimate from the engineer, it far exceeded the initial budgeted amount. And that was due to the requirements for additional retaining walls and the need for a storm water collection system. The resulting costs did not justify the additional 17 or so parking spaces, so the scope of this near-term project will need to go back and be evaluated. And finally, in addition to the Chambers plan for the renovation of the maintenance facility located just off Steve Tate, The current priority is actually for the redesign of the entrance and egress used by the delivery trucks which service Big Canoe. The traffic flow at that curb on Steve Tate Highway poses dangerous conditions, with delivery trucks sometimes not being capable of pulling completely off the highway, or when they do, they're not able to safely maneuver on site without compromising the safety of some staff vehicles. There are design plans under review which would reposition the entrance just to the north, providing some additional length on this drive. And now, in the not too distant future, when the results from the Bobby Jones Link strategy were released, the overall working knowledge of the master plan for the Big Canoe community did not score highly. And in our discussions regarding the ratings assessed to various topics, like the master plan, the board has decided to initiate a virtual community coffee for the residents and for the staff of Big Canoe. These sessions will provide a platform to present, discuss, and answer questions on community level topics submitted by Big Canoe residents. For example, the master plan for Big Canoe is a well-known title, but not a clearly understood concept. And a session dedicated to the topic will provide you with the basis, the history, and up-to-date reports, as well as current project status on mid and long-term projects. We will work to establish the means of gathering topics of interest and then schedule informative sessions with subject matter experts based on the requests and suggestions from the community. Also in the not too distant future, next slide, the professional collaborative Big Canoe. I am one who has an opinion that there probably aren't many Big Canoe residents who have not been involved at some level with the Wellness Collaborative of Big Canoe. What an amazing organization. Whether as a recipient of services, a team member overseeing the management of the services provided, or as an active member enjoying the fulfillment of being part of their solution. It is in our pursuit of better project results and operating efficiencies that the POA board recognizes we have an untapped wealth of resources and expertise right here in our community. That resource is the incredible range of professional backgrounds and work experience of Big Canoe residents. From ideas and observations working on Leadership Big Canoe and now the POA board, the decision has been made to move forward with the program development for the Professional Collaborative of Big Canoe. The community concept has been discussed for years, and as a result, we're working to organize an active registry of professional resources offered and made available by the generous spirit of Big Canoe residents. So whether your expertise is in environmental management, project management, IT, interior design, or a wealth of other areas, community opportunities abound for you to be a part of the solution. And it will not demand an inordinate amount of your personal time. It'll be a win-win for both the residents and the community. We've already started receiving feedback from conversations with residents offering some IT program design ideas to assemble and manage this program. And with my early discussions with the leadership of the Wellness Collaborative, it's been resulted as a thumbs up for the concept. Big Canoe's professional resources will support our focus to make deliberate, well thought out steps, not only with the master plan, but with the everyday business matters of the Big Canoe community. And with these updates, I'll turn it over to Candace Robertson for an update on capital contribution fees. Thanks.
Let me say a couple words before I think Regis is going to talk about the Rejuvenation project. This
I'm sorry.
This finalizes the input, the summary that we're providing on the 2020 property owner satisfaction survey. As I mentioned, the survey results and the summaries are available. The 8,000 comments are not published, as only 20% of the property owners chose to identify themselves, leaving 80% anonymous. We are going to respect that confidentiality. But you can see those results on the website and look in more detail. We're now going, and the message that we wanted to give this morning is that we have received messages from the 1,800 property owners, from the board, what we need to do, from management, what they need to do. And we have started, and you saw some of the actions. Probably the most significant is Scott and his communication protocol. So we will now move on to two initiatives that we've been working on. The Creek 9 Rejuvenation Project from Regis, and then Candy's going to talk about the capital contribution fee. These are two important initiatives to maintain our community and to explore alternatives for funding capital projects. So Regis, it's all yours.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, as Lou had just mentioned with the in our discussion of the master plan, the rejuvenation or renovation, it was originally termed renovation. We are now referring it to as a rejuvenation, but that was first mentioned as in a presentation of the master plan that took place last November. I'm sure many of you will remember either being in the chapel in person when we were allowed to have in-person meetings, and it seems like so long ago, or else have seen that presentation on video. But in any event, the rejuvenation of our golf courses was a key part of that master plan, one of the key projects. Now, because of the cost of this exceeded the board's authority, expenditure of the funds to accomplish this rejuvenation had to be approved by a vote of the property owners. Now, because of a variety of events that vote on the rejuvenation project did not take place in the fourth quarter of last year as planned. As a result, instead of if originally planned, we would actually have been undertaking this work as we speak. Our Creek 9 would be closed for rejuvenation. But that didn't happen. And the whole project has kind of become overcome by events because of the onset of the COVID virus, and it's kind of been pushed to the back burner, almost off the stove. But just because we haven't been talking about it doesn't mean that the problems have gone away. They're still real. They still exist. We still need to fix them. So with that in mind, there's been a group of 8 property owners. We've been assisted by 3 members of the staff in developing a proposal or an educational campaign to bring to the property owners to allow them to vote on this initiative sometime, hopefully in the month of September. So this is what our timeline for that vote is. First of all, Lou also alluded to this in her presentation. We are currently out for firm fixed price quotes from contractors. It's not we, it's Bill Bergen, who acts as the general contractor and project manager for this, for the rejuvenation project. We expect those quotes back on July 29th. So when we go to the property owners for a vote, we will have firm fixed price quotes for the work. We will have a quote review meeting with Bill Bergen, Bobby Jones, and members of the board and staff. We'll have that on August 3rd. I think that is the Monday after the 29th or something like that. After that August 3rd meeting, I will make a presentation to the board asking them for authorization to proceed with the vote. I will do that by the end of that week, August 5th. And if we do decide to move forward with the vote, there will be a property owner informational campaign that will run from approximately August 10th to September 10th. The ballots would go out on the 8th of September. They would be due back about 3 weeks later. on the 30th, and we would announce the results on October 2nd. So that's just a quick update as to where we are now. If all goes well with the quotations, we will expect that you'll be hearing a lot more from us in the not too distant future. Thank you. And now I will turn it over to Candace Robertson to discuss the capital contribution fee.
Okay, thanks, Regis. Justin, next slide. As a way of background, I'd like to share, and I think most people are aware of this, but it's a timeline that's certainly very important, that beginning in 2018 and 2019, the Finance Committee was charged by the board at that time to review other communities in the Southeast, primarily that had capital contribution programs. And they looked at about 12 communities that did have these, and those were highlighted in the November town hall meeting. These fees actually ranged from $8,000 to $45,000. We were formed in March of April timeframe, the capital contribution fee work group, to provide information and make recommendations to the board regarding a financially responsible and acceptable amendment to the community for funding capital improvement projects for amenities and facilities in the master plan that Lou spoke about. We have 7 work group members, and these property owners include members from the board, the finance committee, the long range planning committee, and a real estate professional. The fundamental question that we, next slide, please. The fundamental question that we started with was, do we raise the capital expenditures fund from existing property owners or new residents who choose to live here? And we still believe the capital contribution fee is the best viable option for funding our capital expenditure plan over the next 10 years. We did look at alternatives to a capital contribution fee, which would be increasing monthly assessments, again, drawing on reserves, but a significant portion of this reserve is actually in a capital reserve fund for emergencies, and currently the covenant requires these funds to be repaid in 3 years. And the third alternative would have been to borrow funds, which is not the alternative that we considered, but wanted to recognize that it was one. In our 3 meetings that we had, we also discussed the long range planning committee's review of prioritizing the master plan projects, as Lou mentioned. And then lastly, we spent a lot of time, or actually Amy Truffenbaum and Jane Hayden spent a lot of time providing us with a financial sensitivity analysis over the next 10 years, beginning with 2020. These analyses reviewed worst, best, and likely scenarios. We reviewed the cash flow available for the master plan projects after operating expenses and routine capital expenditures were accounted for. So in conclusion, several of our members advocated a flat fee of $5,000. Several considered a fee based on a percentage, and others, the majority of our 7-member group considered a fee no greater than $2,500. We took this recommendation to the board, which will be deliberated upon in the next week or 2, but we also recommended that the board be charged with approving the priorities of the master plan, and also recommended a committee or group approve the estimating process for each project. The CCF work group's charge going forward is to communicate the board's recommendations to the community. We believe a critical factor in implementing the master plan is establishing the methodology and a consistent process for estimating these project costs and evaluating priorities on a fairly regular basis. So in conclusion, communications to the community going forward, we plan a series of community gatherings, 3 or 4 prior to a vote. Why? We share the thought processes of the, we want to share the thought processes of the CCF work group and the board so the property owners can decide. And then, of course, we want to be able to answer questions or concerns that are raised in these meetings. We believe the vote right now is targeted for late third quarter. And that concludes my comments on our CCF work group.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Before we go to question and answers, let me just do a real quick wrap up. We on purpose did not include as a presenter Bobby Jones Links. That is not to say that they have not been heavily involved with a lot of things that we're doing here and assisting us in many ways. For example, the survey itself, they provided a tool to produce and analyze the survey. The Creek 9 project, that Rejuvenation project Regis mentioned, they're involved with their expertise in building golf courses. The COVID is a never ending, and we've had the benefit of their advice and guidance for what other communities, other Bobby Jones Links communities are doing. They put together a daily tracking tool for finances and issues that's just coming off the ground. It looks like that's going to be very, very helpful. And one more is what Scott mentioned, the 17-point plan, improvement plan for food and beverage. And Lou mentioned that we were going to reinstitute community coffees, and maybe we call it community Zooms. But maybe the first, one of the candidates for the first new community coffee is Gotam presenting the 17-point plan for food and beverage improvement. So Bobby Jones Links has been very actively involved in this in a number of other ways. So I'll turn it over now to questions and answers. There might be a slight delay as Justin receives and prepares the questions, but we're ready for questions from the property owners that are listening in here today.
Hey, Bob, we actually don't have any questions lined up for you.
Justin, we can take the rest of the day off. Is that right? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I hope one or two people were listening out there, even though they didn't have questions. I hope it's a testament to us providing answers before the questions were asked. So that's it for today, everyone. I thank everyone who participated in the call and those that were behind the scenes helping make this happen. And the next you'll hear from us is Thursday at the July board meeting. Thanks and have a great weekend.